What's up, Darren?
Hey, Chad. There we go. All right. Sorry.
Cool.
Running home from dinner here. I saw your email you sent out about what I'd be presenting about. So I basically just put together a whole list of topics on that stuff. So
It's awesome, man.
we'll be good to go.
Looks beautiful wherever you are today.
Yeah, it's pretty. Well, I'm not that far from you. Although I went by your place, by your town today. I drove out to Westchester. I'm buying a warehouse out there. So beautiful drive down 30.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Good stuff. Man. All right. Yeah, I just ran home. I was over at the with the family over at the club having dinner, and I set an alarm. I'm like, I got to be out of here at 20 till. I live about 3 minutes away, so
Yeah, it's good.
I didn't
I
miss
just wanted to make sure you knew we were on. So,
it.
yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I just do that thing where I just squeeze it. I didn't even look and see it was you. But I got home. I'm like, all right, yeah, better let them know I'm alive.
Alive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, as some folks will know who frequent our meetups, I've probably been stood up about 10 times.
Oh
Uh,
no, 10.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we host a lot of meetups, so that's probably out of like 200. But
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah.
So
So,
5%. I guess that's not terrible.
no, but it sure is an awkward moment when you're like, this guy who you all came to hear, he's coming at some point.
you you better have some pre-made presentations ready to go.
Yeah, I just start talking.
Yeah,
Cool.
this is
Well, for
right
folks
here.
who are joining here, we'll get going here in about 2 minutes. Give people some time here to join, and then we'll do a few kind of odds and ends, and then we'll get into the star of the show here.
Yeah, I will say your announcement for the meeting, you definitely gave me a lot to live up to. I think you had the word amazing in there twice, and my wife's like, who is this guy who's going to be talking tonight? So
Yeah, you
better come.
gotta make it sound exciting, right?
Well, like the more you dive into it, you're like, man, I guess there is. You have more to share than you think once you start diving in. At first, you're like,
Right.
what am I going to talk about? But there is quite a bit.
All right, we'll get going here in one more minute. For those that are kind of new to Zoom, there is a chat bar which you can use to send out messages. I'll try to stay on top of that as we go. It's a great way to ask questions, and then I'll kind of intermingle them through the conversation as we kind of work on through here various topics. But I'm sure you guys have some stuff that you're wondering, could be a personal deal you're working on, could be something that we talk about that maybe you don't understand. And so often, if you don't understand it, other folks don't too. So definitely use that chat bar when you have a question, and we'll try to answer it. I like the chat. I guess there's a question and answer thing here too that I'm still trying to get used to, but the chat's my favorite. If you can try to use that. If you have a question, that'd be good. You're welcome to make snide remarks too about myself if you'd like.
Me too.
Yeah, or Darren. Darren's a good sport. So, all right, well, let's do this. People are still kind of filing in, but we'll get started for those that are on time, and I'll kind of work through some news and notes as people kind of keep calling in, and then we'll rock and roll. So let's see. Let's share my screen here. Okay. So I'm getting better at Zoom, but it's still not like the live thing. So yeah, I'm Chad Gallagher for those who haven't met me before. We host these events called Real Estate Hackers. So this is a virtual meetup event here tonight. We do host all sorts of different events, usually in person, but obviously recently it's been more remote. So if I can get this to be full screen here. Oh, this is what I'm looking for. There we go. About every 2 weeks, we do one of these virtual meetups. If you ever can't make the meetup, we do save these on the YouTube channel. If you Google Real Estate Hackers, you'll find our YouTube channel where we're slowly adding content into there. Quick kind of early sneak preview. So as many of you know, we were planning to host a real estate conference. We had over 650 people lined up to attend, about 80 vendors, 30 speakers, and then this pandemic thing happened. So we had kind of pushed the date out and pushed the date out again, and we've now kind of settled on a final resting spot that we feel confident we'll be able to hold an awesome, massive conference. So these are the dates, April 23rd to the 25th, 2021. Same spot as last time. So it'll be at the Lancaster Convention Center. And we expect honestly a lot of the material to be the same, but in some ways it'll allow us to actually even find more content and speakers between now and then. So for those of you who had seen the lineup before, it was pretty awesome, and a mix of real estate vendors, speakers, and social networking, social events, Friday and Saturday night. So April 23rd, 24th, 25th, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So kind of save the date there. We'll do much more announcing about that, but that's when the first ever Real Estate Hackers Conference will be. I put the email here if you ever have any questions about what we do. We also have a podcast under the same name, Real Estate Hackers. So if you're interested in kind of catching up, we've done probably 50 podcasts over the last few years, all sorts of really awesome folks. We kind of focus on the mix of real estate and tech is kind of the goal of the podcast. So a lot of good stuff there. Cool. Just real quick on kind of some partners here. So Red Rabbit Insurance. Many of you who are probably on here have worked with Ryan at Red Rabbit Insurance. We think he's the best in the business in kind of the real estate investor property insurance space. So his email's there. It's Ryan at redrabbitinsurance.com. He basically focuses on working with investors. Saved me about $5,000 a year with better coverage. We had a house burned down and got full payout on that. So he's been really awesome to work with, and many of our investors work with him. And then I co-founded a property management company called Slate House. We manage over 4,000 units across 4 states, across the Mid-Atlantic. So Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, and Virginia. About 100 awesome people in that company. And also have real estate agents who focus on helping people buy and sell real estate investments. It's a bit of a niche kind of in the real estate and brokerage space. And these folks, these agents really love helping out people create wealth. That's what they do. And they're incredibly knowledgeable about how to evaluate real estate. So I put my email and phone number down there. If anyone ever wants to reach me, that's my info. And I get some of the craziest phone calls about all sorts of stuff in real estate, and happy to kind of help people out. So, all right, let's get to Darren here. So I put wholesaling, but he does so much more than that. But I'm going to kind of get me out of this and get Darren Smith on. Let's see. Let's stop sharing my screen. There we go. All right. Cool. So Darren, thanks for joining, man.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Chad.
Cool. So let's see. Where do you want to kind of kick it off? I guess first to kind of set the background, I think we'll talk about a lot today, but I think one of the things that differentiates you in the wholesaling space is you live in Pennsylvania, but you do a lot of wholesale deals in 2 states, not just Pennsylvania, but also Colorado, which I think is unique. I think most people would think, take on deals that are in their backyard, and you've kind of said, no, let's use systems and process to figure out how to do this even a different part of the country. Let's maybe use that as a starting point of, why the heck would you do this in Colorado and live in Pennsylvania?
That's a great point, Chad. And the reason is I didn't have a choice, is the bottom line. I've been doing real estate for a long time, got really heavy into real estate about 6-7 years ago when my wife and I moved out to Colorado for her to do a residency or fellowship. And I was doing computers full-time at the job as a consultant, but also really loved real estate and started, doing that a lot more. About 4.5 years ago, I got laid off from my job. And at that point I had ramped up my wholesaling and flipping enough at that point that, at least I thought at that point, to go ahead and make it a full-time thing, with my wife's support. And that was what I did. When I got laid off from a round of downsizing, I didn't go back, and I just stuck with it. And then 2.5 years ago, my wife and I, we'll be honest, mostly my wife, we kind of decided to head back to Pennsylvania, back near family. This is sort of where I'm from. I have a lot of family in this area. And so we left Colorado after 4 years. And the decision at that point was, do I keep it going? I mean, I built a great business. I had something that was through ups and downs. Don't get me wrong. There was a lot of hard times, building that, and a lot of times where it was, really kind of pulling out all stops to hold it together. But at that point, I had something sustainable. I had something I really felt proud of that I built, and a good reputation. And so I decided to keep it going after I left, and was able to rehire up a team, and move to Pennsylvania, and keep that going.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I guess let's go like just a little deeper into that. Has it kind of changed your perception of real estate doing deals across the country? I guess it kind of forced you to change how you operate a little bit.
It totally has. It takes you from someone you get the phone call and you jump in your car and you go do something, to now, hey, I have to have a team of good people who are there, and you can't get in the car. You can't go someplace and do that. I was just talking with my wife Lauren yesterday about how I'm in a high-end mastermind, and I love how you said the word, your perceptions change when you're around people who maybe they're doing a house or two a year, which is great. We all started there. I started there. But then I'm around people who are doing millions and millions and hundreds of deals a year. And so the perception that I had of what was possible, that's probably why I was able to do that, because I was around people who had businesses set up in multiple states and were already doing that type of thing and scaling systems and people, to allow me to see that. Otherwise, as I've said to many people, I don't have an original thought in my head. Everything is what I learned from other people. And I've learned a lot from that group that allowed me to do a lot of things that I do.
That's awesome. Do you want to maybe just dig into like one or two things specifically you've learned by investing kind of with systems? I guess maybe kind of dig into that where you're not the one who's running down the street to check out the house.
Yeah, I would love to dive into that more. What I actually did, I don't know if this is a good time to jump to that, but
Yeah,
when you laid out the topics for the meeting, I went through and put up a couple of talking points about each of those things.
let's do it.
Yeah, talk to how that works, how I'm able to, run companies in 2 different states and do it all remotely like that. So the first thing you had on topic was marketing. I mean, that's something all of us, I'm sure, on the call have tried. Maybe have a website, maybe we've sent some postcards, tried to do some cold calling. There's 100 different ways that you can market out there. So one of the struggles that we have in a business, especially one of this size, where we're spending this quantity of money on marketing every month, is, where do you target that money to? What's actually working? And I wish I had some magic thing that I could say, boy, if you do this, this works every time, and it's going to work forever. But it's a constantly shifting target. So whatever you have in place, whatever you're doing, I would say start off with 1 or 2 things, depending on where you're at in your level. But maybe you're just doing postcards, or maybe if you want to step back and go cheaper, maybe you're just doing cold calling, and you get really good at that one thing. Keep trying that, keep diving in, and see how it works, and then track your metrics so kind of what's working and what's not. The other thing is, when you're doing your marketing, being able to have the systems in place behind that marketing to respond really quickly, know what you can do with every deal. Like if you get a phone call and someone I could go into 100 different types of deals, but like when they call you up and they start telling you about their problems and telling you what's going on about the house, knowing kind of what bucket to put that in. So just as you're doing right now, I mean, everybody on this call is learning more and expanding their knowledge, and that's fantastic. So when you get that call, you know what to do with those leads that come in. And then probably one of the most important things that I'll get into a little bit later on is just knowing how to talk to sellers, being a really good salesperson. I almost hate that term salesperson because it's kind of the antithesis of what we do. But like, how do you talk to that person? How do you truly listen to them? Learn about their situation. You know, you don't want to, when they start talking, you know, you don't dive in right away and want to answer their question because you're so smart and you just learned something at a real estate conference. No, just listen and, you know, learn what they're doing and then learn how you can help them. You know,
Yeah, can I just pause you there? Is there something maybe in the marketing sphere that's like surprised you of maybe something that's worked a little better than you would have thought? Kind of like under the radar or
Yeah. So what we're doing, our top things that we're doing for marketing right now are online paid advertising. So we buy from other websites like Fast Home Offers. We also have our own website that we do PPC through and SEO. But cold calling is probably the thing that was one of the hardest things to get going. It's those two things are longer term. Now, I'm sorry, Fast Home Offer, you start paying, you get leads right away. So
mhm,
there's short-term, more expensive leads, and there's long-term, cheaper leads.
mhm.
And you guys probably know things that fall into different of those buckets. Cold calling is one that we've been doing about a year and a half now. We started early 2019, and we lost money in 2019 in doing that after about 9 months of trying it out. And it took a lot of training, a lot of weekly calls with them where we're going through the systems. We're going through here's how like the first 10 seconds of the call, it's critical. And we've had really good success with that this year, especially in the multifamily space. That's been really hot, especially in my Colorado market. And so, yeah, really like the cold calling. But again, you can't just hire a company and think, oh, they're going to be really good at this and they'll handle it for me.
Yeah.
Uh, you really gotta train
And
them.
let me just pause you there. When you say, so it's interesting. When I look at marketing, uh, it's like the concept of buying leads. I always think that's the easiest,
Mhm.
typically, right? In most industries, in my digital advertising world, we used to call it affiliate, but it's the same concept wherever you are. So you're basically just buying a specific lead, and usually it's the easiest, but usually also the most expensive, and typically the return's not as great because you're competing against a lot of folks. Um, do you find that the cold calling and probably other initiatives like that, not only are you getting better over time, but maybe you're like also starting to get some long tail residual leads that come in over time? Like you started that conversation and a year later, now they want to sell and they call you back. Um,
Chad, you absolutely nailed it. Cold calling, we are finding the leads are much longer in timeline. We just closed a property last month that we put under contract last October. We're putting properties under contract now that we talked to for the first time 6 months ago, 9 months ago. The other thing, when you talk about buckets to put every deal into, we have partnered with a fantastic realtor, and that's hard to do, by the way, because a lot of realtors you work with don't know investing, and maybe they're set in their ways. So working with our sellers who are a little more challenging, the people that call us, they're not your typical retail, oh, my house is beautiful type people. So finding a realtor you can work with to put them in those buckets helps a lot. And that's a long-term process of getting those. Even ones deals we've referred to her have taken a long time. The other thing about uh, knowing a bucket to put every lead in. So everybody, knows how to use. I call it the cash hammer, where you go in. Here's the property, here's the rehab, here's my discount I need. Here's my cash offer. And I would say probably I'd have to look at the numbers, but 40-50% of the properties we buy, it's some type of creative financing on it. Either there's a seller financing, straight up because they have enough equity in the home. We're buying it subject to the existing mortgage, and that's a whole other conversation that we probably would take way longer than this call. You can almost do a whole call on that, where maybe they owe a little bit too much or they need a little bit more money out of it. And just knowing, hey, I have the retail option, I have a subject to option, I have a creative financing option, or whatever else, or the cash hammer option as well. And then having all those extra things, because it's not always about price. If your conversation focuses around price, you've probably already lost. And that should be the very end of your conversation. You want to be talking about, boy, how can we help you? What's your problems? What's your picture perfect? What are all the little things that you can do to ease this transaction as much as possible? I'm buying a warehouse in Westchester. I went and just put that under contract today. And I bought a forklift. I have no interest in buying a forklift, but this was the thing that the seller kept coming back to. They were stressing about what they were going to do about this dang forklift in there. I'm getting a phenomenal price on the warehouse. I could give a hoot about a forklift. I'm going to sell the thing, but it made it easier. So just add in those little extra things. Can you hire some movers? Can you clean out their house? Leave everything behind, that kind of stuff.
I love the forklift example. I find in sales, I mean, I have a fairly significant track record not track record, but different things I've done in sales. And I find that a lot of times in bigger deals, there are things that come up that have literally no meaning to the ROI of the transaction. So to use your forklift, what % of the overall transaction was the forklift? 10%, if that, 5 maybe?
6%, and I'm not even going to tell you the deal I'm getting on it because it's a phenomenal deal.
And are you going to just break even on the forklift? Like you'll just resell it to like whatever?
I got a fairly good deal. I'm paying, it's a $3,000 forklift, and I already have a buyer for $4,000. I called a friend of mine I know who buys and sells forklifts. So.
But you probably would. I mean, even if you bought it for 3 and sold it for 3, yeah, it's so insignificant.
I wouldn't care.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. That's one of my favorite parts of like transactions is when you find those things that are so incredibly important to the seller and have no impact plus or minus to the other side of the transaction. And I always say like those are the things that they have to go in the deal because they don't matter to one side plus or minus, but they matter so much to the other side. That's actually a key deal point. So I love that. It's great.
Critical, Chad. And that actually leads me right into my next main tip. And it was a topic you said, like, how do you close more deals with sellers? And it's exactly that, like taking the time to truly listen to them, to slow down, try and master speech, but whatever you're talking, cut it in half, slow it down. In fact, I just made a mental note to myself to slow down as I'm on this call because I know I talk too fast. It's a terrible habit that I do. In fact, I was telling my guys the other day, I took my Audible books back down to 1x speed purely to try and retrain my brain. So it's that. Don't think you need to interrupt them when you're talking. I had a seller I was talking to the other day. Their question was, how quickly can you close? Which is a super common question. It took them a minute to ask me that question. And the whole time I just want to blurt out the answer. Just shut up. I hate to be blunt, but shut up. Let them talk. Let them explain the whole thing they want to talk and get it out, and then pause at the end. If you're not waiting a couple of seconds at least when they stop talking, you're talking too fast. You're cutting them off. They may have had further things to say. I had a deal last week. I almost cut somebody off. They said they wanted $180,000 for their house. I was about to jump in. I still wanted to jump in, but I paused that half a second. They said, but I'd take 170. If I would have talked, that's $10,000 I just left on the table because I didn't wait 5 freaking seconds. So slow down, stop trying to answer every question and prove how smart you are. The second thing is find out why somebody's asking a question. So that question of like, let's take, how quickly can you close? You don't want to answer that question right out. The way we answer that question is, we get that question an awful lot. That's a great question. I got to ask you though, what does closing quickly mean to you? Or, or what do you mean by how quickly can you close? Are you looking to go fast or slow? Because if somebody says, man, I really need 3 months, or otherwise I can't sell this house. And you're like, man, I can close in 3 days or in a week.
Scary.
You went the wrong way on that. Ask more questions. And then the third, and this is a critical tip when you're talking with sellers, is you always want to be more negative than the seller is towards getting to that contract, wherever that at. And by the way, all of this stuff, our sales Bible is John Martinez. He's a Midwest Revenue Group. That's the training.
Yeah, I've actually been out to the Midwest to see him in person.
Oh, beautiful.
Where is he? Kansas City? Is that right? Where did I go? I don't even remember. Wherever his home is.
I was going to say, Minneapolis, somewhere in that way.
No.
I think everybody on my team has been several times. I've never been, so I forget.
Yeah, it was like Kansas City or something like that. But yeah, anyway, I went out to see him, and he is great. But so you're talking about being more negative. Could you just hit on that a little bit more?
Sure. he used the example of the pendulum. So, 1 to 10. So wherever the seller is in that, if he's at like, well, I think I'm ready to sell my house. So yeah, let's proceed. The way you're going to answer that is something like, you know, it sounds like you're kind of ready to sell, but I'm getting the hesitation. There's really something holding you back. So you pull that more negative. If somebody says, man, I just don't think I'm going to sell to you today. I'm kind of thinking about it, but yeah, probably not. Let's just call it a miss. Your answer is, it sounds like no matter what I offered you today at any price, you wouldn't sell your house to me. You went all the way negative. And even and the other end of the pendulum, if someone's like, hey, I'm ready to do this, I think we got all my problems solved. Let's sign the contract right now. Your response is, hey, that's great. It sounds like we've solved all your problem. I still are you absolutely sure though? I still feel like there may be something else that I can help you with. And so you're close. If they're at a 9, if they're at a 10, 9 or 10, you're at like an 8. Just always that little bit more negative. And I'm telling you, it works in not just with houses, it works in anything you're trying to do.
And is it building trust? Is that ultimately what you're doing there?
It's you're not falling into that salesperson role. And John Martinez is going to explain this 100 times better than me. But whenever you're trying to pull somebody towards a sell, it's like, man, you need to sell to me because of this, this, and this. And they're like, I'm not so sure. Where if you're like, hey, man, it sounds like, everything you're telling me, the house is nice, you're not in a hurry. Why don't you just list with a realtor? It sounds like that would be your best option. You're literally pushing them away and you're taking something that they want. What they want is your offer. They want your number. They want you to buy their house. That's why they called you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they don't, but most people want you to buy their house. So if you're taking away and you're pushing them away,
Mm-hmm.
now they got to come get you. Now the conversation's changed because they're the ones who are saying, no, I do want to sell. I don't want to. And you'll find out more things. Like take the realtor example. You should probably just sell with a realtor. I just don't trust realtors, completely bogus. Maybe they had one bad experience, or, I don't want people walking through my house because, I had something stolen one time, or no, you just get more information out of them. The more you push them away, that they got to reel you back in.
That's great. I just want to add one more thing. One thing I found in kind of selling stuff over the years is, especially these kinds of sales, it seems to me like the longer we talk, obviously the deeper the relationship gets, but I seem to lose less deals when we've had a lengthy conversation. And I don't know if, you've done much more of selling kind of this specific sale. Do you find that that once you kind of deepen that conversation, it elongates it, it builds up more trust, it becomes a little more sticky on the back end?
I can totally understand why that's happened to you. We definitely see that phenomena. Can you think of something that you're doing in those conversations that makes them last so long that you think builds that connection? Can you recall maybe some questions that you asked or how you did that? And I have some answers if I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but.
Yeah. It's totally different in every conversation, but honestly, a lot of it is me trying to really just understand who they are as a person, and then trying to match that and almost validate I'm similar as they are. And so, because we work with people all over the Mid-Atlantic, but somebody calling us from New York City is going to be very different from someone calling from Southern Virginia, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can tell in their tone right away and their approach. But both sides of things, if the person in New York realizes like, well, I've lived in New York and I know how New Yorkers work and I get it. I get the New York style of business. I can't just tell them that. I have to actually bring up some examples that are that really hit home for them. So if I know someone lives in New York City, I will 1000% talk about the West Village, which is where I happen to live for a little bit. I lived there for a year. It honestly didn't make a huge impact on my life, but if I mention the West Village and the street I lived in, 3rd and Sullivan, it changes the conversation dramatically. And it seems to build trust, and it takes a while to get there because I can't just it has to be a natural way. Anyway, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a great way of doing it. You're showing some connection that you have, some similarities that you have. Yeah, absolutely. That's one way of doing it. We're actually finding we have to do that more on the East Coast than in Colorado. The people in Colorado seem to be a little bit more trusting, and the conversations we're having here, people are a little bit more standoffish, and I'm sure New York City is even more so. We're only in the 5 counties in Southeast Pennsylvania. So I can see that. The real thing to build trust, showing commonalities is definitely a way. Matching tone, just pacing with them, repeating what they say. Like, man, this house, oh gosh, it's been a headache. Boy, it's been a headache, huh? All I did was say exactly what they did back to them. And so anytime they say something to you that they're talking about, instead of answering them, instead of saying, oh yeah, me too, or oh yeah, whatever, just doing a softening statement. Gosh, boy, that sounds tough. Can you tell me more about that? Or, man, really? Boy, man, I know what that must be like. Or if you don't know what it's like, if you have a similar experience, like you're saying you're in the West Side or whatever you said, oh yeah, boy, I know what it's like on the West Side. Man, what was that like for you? Just getting them to tell you more. So it's that softening statement and then that question to get them to elaborate further. We even have simple ones like I remember our cold caller, some guy said, oh yeah, I'm moving to Georgia. And I won't say we pounced all over him, but like our feedback was, he's like, oh, okay, you're moving to Georgia. Next question. Like, no, Georgia, gosh, what's got you going to Georgia? You got family there? Dive into that as much as you can. Always be asking more questions. It's not just a script that you're going through. So yeah, that's how you build rapport. Just get people to talk. And as I think John Martinez sent out an email, it was like sex, cocaine, and something else. And it was all these things release endorphins. And when people are talking about themselves, it releases the same endorphins. And so that was kind of the catchphrase.
We'll jump off this, but one other thing I always tell myself, it's a rule I make. If I'm ever working on a big partnership transaction, anything big, right? Not just a simple little thing, but anything big, I will never let myself propose something like in this case, a price in the first conversation. It's just a rule I make for myself. So first long conversation we have, I will not propose anything. And I find it's just like a really simple way to make myself force me to hear everything I possibly can from them and just wait and then really add some time and length to the engagement so that by the time I do present something to them, I've really been able to think through everything that they want. I find it works so much better. And I find that these conversations go so much better. When you're having a conversation with someone and at the end of it, you still haven't even pitched them something. It's like, man, this guy actually he really does care, I guess is ultimately kind of what it probably gets at. And then just creates a better partnership because you've learned about the cranes and all the weird things that you never would have got to if you didn't hear so much about them.
That's an excellent tactic. When you get down to price and pulling out the contract, that is the last 2% of your conversation with them. So exactly what you do by saying, hey, I'm not going to talk about it in the first deal. Yours, it sounds like you have multiple conversations. I think you're able to fit it in a first conversation if you wanted, but I almost like your tactic better, especially if you're starting out, and to train yourself to not talk about that because it's so easy. How many times are they going to ask you about price? Man, what do you pay me for the house? God, what do you think this thing's worth? How much of a discount do you guys, have to knock off when you buy my house? All these are questions that you're going to get. And every one you answer with, that's an excellent question. I know we can get to that, but honestly, price is usually the last thing that stops us from doing a deal. I just want to make sure that I've solved everything else you kind of have going on and just make sure I understand that I can put you in the right place and see if we're a good fit. So if we get through a couple of questions, we'll definitely get to that. And I know we'll be able to figure that out once we get there.
That's awesome.
Putting it off and say those kind of things.
Cool. So what's next in your?
The next was the systems for running kind of the business, in both things. So one of it was, and I won't say one of it, the most important thing is the people. I mean, there's absolutely no way this works without people. I sat with that warehouse owner today for 5 hours. I can't take phone calls. I can't do seller, visits and stuff. In fact, I'm only doing seller visits because I happen to be in Pennsylvania and I'm tagged with it at the moment, but we're going to be hiring people here once we scale it up a little bit. We've only been here a couple of months, but just having really good people. And everybody says, oh, I want good people. I want to hire good people. How do I do that? Again, I could do an entire talk about how you hire those people, but what I will tell you is how you know when you have them. And I have all these systems in place for hiring people. I set up a lot of automatic barriers to entry. So they have to do a disc test. They have to schedule themselves on a Calendly meeting. They have to send me an audio recording of something. All these things that pre-qualify people, so I'm not wasting my time with a lot of tire kickers. They have to be serious. But then when you get them in the door and you got somebody hired, I hear people like, well, how do I, make sure I know that, what they're doing? How do I track their time? How do I, have them doing things that are valuable? You do need to get, train people and coach them and that kind of thing. But I've always found that if I have somebody who I am constantly checking on them, if I'm constantly like, hey, what are you doing? What was your productivity? Or they're always coming to me like, oh, what do I do? What can I do now? How do I help? That's the wrong person. There's nobody on my team who, if they come to me with something, they've already tried to figure it out themselves. They already have exhausted their resources. Now they're like, hey, here's what the problem. Here's what I think we can do. What do you think? Also, they have everybody who is in their role on my team is better at that position than I am by far, hands down. I can't even say it. I did all these roles. I did everything for years. And so I know how to do all these roles, but everyone is better than me. And they have taken those roles to an entirely another level. They're coming to me with, boy, here's my new idea of how I can improve this and what I can do. And I'll get into documentation and other things in a little bit, but that's the kind of people you want. The people that are self-starters figuring it out, and they're coming to you with solutions, not problem. You're not micromanaging. Every time I do coaching as part of another group, and people come to me, oh, I got this person, and every time I come, she didn't get this done. I give her a checklist, and she gets 2 things. I'm like, you shouldn't even have to be the ones giving them checklists. They should be coming up with things to do. So that's probably the number one thing. And then
I'll pause you really quick. We do some leadership meetings, and one of our leaders came in, and I noticed she started to do this where she comes in with a checklist for us, and I stopped her. I think I said in the last one, I said, I gotta tell you, it's the most endearing thing you do. Like, I mean, talk about what a great, just a great quality that for them to have is, hey, by the way, I've come prepared for this, and it's not, these aren't demands. These are discussion points. These are problems. These are things we need to talk about. These are ideas. These are concepts. But I just think, man, when you see that, that's when you know you've got just a great team member, someone who's put some serious thought into the meeting to kind of make the company better or the team better or whatever. So.
You found a good one when they're coming to you with those kind of ideas.
Yeah, that's great.
That's fantastic. Yeah, definitely hold on to her.
Okay. Can you talk about documentation a little bit? Like, and maybe even also relate to if it's a single man person, right? You're out there and you're wholesaling by yourself. Were you documenting kind of how you did stuff along the way to keep organized?
You really should. Anytime that you're doing something, you think you're going to do it more than once, even if you just start out with a simple Google Doc or Excel sheet or whatever of writing those steps down, I think that's critical. And then to take it one step further, I'll just tell you how we document things. We use something called Asana, and it's just a task tracker and a process tracker thing. And I think it's way more robust than we even use it with. But every role has its own heading, and then under that are all the different tasks, not tasks, but like things that would need to happen. So let's just take transaction management. One of them, maybe it's closing a subject to property. Maybe one is there's a tenant in the property. How do we deal with that? Maybe it's one, hey, we're buying this one to flip. What do we do for that? And then under that is sub tasks that happen for every one. And we also will do Loom is another app that we use, Loom, and it's a screen recorder, and it'll record video too, but it's a screen capture, and we use that extensively. So if you're doing let's say you're pulling a list off of ListSource, which is how some people get their mailing lists or their calling lists. Hey, how do you do it? What do you step? Well, you could type it all out and take you an hour, or you could do a quick Loom video and then just hit the high level steps. So that's how we do a lot of our documentation, and it's fantastic. It's not only those kind of steps, but it's also then just like projects that we're working on. So one of our things, we have a new employee, Mario. He's phenomenal, and he speaks Spanish, and so he is growing out our Spanish marketing. We're doing Spanish bandit signs, Spanish radio. He's meeting with Spanish leaders, and he has a task list under there of all these, I'll call them infinity tasks, that he can do at any time to build out that networking, doing stuff on Facebook posts on Spanish websites and stuff like that. And so that's another place you can list those things. So if you as a solopreneur, somebody out there who is one, yeah, if you have something you're doing, just write it down, even at a high level, because I guarantee you may not see it again for 6 months, but you'll be happy you have it there. And then, label it something that, you can actually identify.
Can we talk about the Spanish stuff a little bit? Are you seeing that working? Are you starting to get some traction in kind of using Spanish as a way to drive more sales?
So I will say we're in a heavy Spanish market in Colorado. We have not done this in Pennsylvania. And from what I can tell, the demographics here would be, well, not as extensive or, pervasive with Spanish. I know it is heavy here as well. I would say we're only about 2 months into it. And so we've done the radio. We're definitely getting calls. We're having conversations. We have not had a contract from Spanish marketing yet. We also actually, we duplicated our website. So we had a new website built a couple months ago. Every single page is being duplicated in Spanish as well. And that hasn't actually launched yet. So I really can't give you a lot of results on how that's working yet. But I know they're a community. If somebody likes that idea, I would say focus on building relationships. And honestly, this is in any business you're doing. And I'm going to get to that on something a little bit later on. One of your questions was, what are my successful buyers doing who are buying properties? And that's definitely one of them. But in the Spanish markets, they're very, very community based. They love people that cater to them. Maybe the wrong word. I don't want to, but cater to them. Say, hey, we are focusing on Spanish, but we want to serve that community. We understand you, and then give things to them. They love, just, hey, we're here to support you. Here's backpacks for the kid for school. So like those little type of handouts, they'll get you like more publicity than you can think of. So try and think of ways you can reach out, and I think that would be a big help. One more thing about managing people and managing teams remotely. One-on-ones. I listen to Brian Buffini's, I think it's called Manager Basic Tools was the name of his podcast. But he has a couple, it's like 3 or 4 of them on one-on-ones. And everybody should be having a one-on-one every single week, half an hour with their direct reports. So everybody in my company, if they have somebody that's working for them, that one-on-one is done every week. And I get into Brian Buffini if you want to learn about it, but basically it's just the time to listen, time to let them talk about whatever they want to talk about. And then maybe at the end, you can talk about projects that are going on. But if you're not talking to somebody every week at that level, other than just a quick, hey, business call, how's that property going? You're not showing you truly care about them. You truly are vested in their success. Find out what do they define as success? What do they want out of working for your company? What do they want out of life? And how do you help them, get there? I have one employee, and I know for sure he extremely values his freedom of location. He travels extensively. He probably traveled, I bet, 3 months last year, and he was able to work as he traveled around. But like that's critical for him. So find those things out, other things that they really want out of life and that they want to achieve. I have one who he wants to build a rental portfolio. Great, you're in a perfect company to do that. I'm going to help you get there, and you got to know those things to get them there.
That's great.
So one-on-one. So I the next topic, and we can go into something else, but you said, what are the traits that our successful buyers have? Do you want to go into that? Or
yeah, that'd be great. Actually, I'll pause you when we got one question come in. I do like to try like intermingle just kind of one-off questions. Larry Steinhaus, who I've interacted with quite a bit. He's a great character in the real estate space. You'll see him wearing these coats with money, dollar bills all over them. You can't miss him. He's asking, how much earnest money do you recommend putting down on your deals? So yeah, pretty specific question, but interested to kind of hear how you talk about that.
We have had ones where we've put more earnest money down, but I'll say quick answer is our default is $100. And to be perfectly honest, 95% of our deals, we've never put it down. We just have some money, and it's not even that much, set aside at our title company. That's our earnest money. It just sits there. The money never actually moves or never does anything. And so we just put on $100. It's a token thing. If we do run into deals where somebody says, hey, I need to move to Missouri and I need $3,000 to get it done, we will pay $3,000 earnest money ahead of the sale to get them so that they can move and whatever that thing is. And that'll be, larger amounts sometimes.
Okay. So it sounds like it's almost nothing most of the time. And then sometimes ends up being, maybe 3 to 5K if that's needed to help them get the moving truck or something.
Yeah. I mean, we bought $500,000 houses for $100 earnest money.
That's great.
And that never actually was given. So.
And then just Darren, I want to actually go back to one topic you talked about. You talked about using a real estate agent. I think that's a little bit unusual in the wholesaler space. Can you talk about kind of your mindset there of why the real estate agent partner helps, but also what do you look for in a real estate agent partner? Like who makes for a good one in what you're trying to do?
Oh, so we've only tried 2 partnerships, and I'll say what failed. The one lady had done over 1,000 transactions for 20 years, had worked with investors extensively. The problem was, great lady, I really liked her as a person. She was so successful in what she was doing that she didn't want to learn new things. She didn't want to learn to work with our sellers, learn our systems, hire people. And so the one that we've just been, this is a cliche, but crushing it with, I'll say, is a younger agent. She's been doing it less than 2 years, and she just dove right into our systems. We actually are sending her. John Martinez just came out with a real estate agent training course about 2 months ago, and so she's taking that course. She's in our Podio system. She's in our CRM, writing back and forth. She's talking with these sellers and picking up on our sales tactics, and it's been really successful. And she was good already. I'm not trying to say she's only good because she's with us. She was already, empathetic with people, but these extra tactics have been really helpful. So that's what I would look for. The reason that having a real estate agent, I think is almost critical, is twofold. One, it lets you capitalize every deal. So we're making, we're getting a marketing fee by referring leads that we have over to the agent. If you're not an agent yourself, you can't split commissions. If you are an agent, you can work out a commission split deal, but you can get paid a marketing fee, which is different. But it's critical. The other reason it's critical, not just for money, is it changes your conversation with that seller. As I said earlier, you always want to be more negative. And so if you're sitting there and someone's saying, my house is in great shape, I think I just might list with a realtor. It sounds like you really should just list with a realtor. I mean, why don't you just do that? Like, to be brass, that takes some balls to say that if you don't have an agent lined up. Like people always feel like this deal is so precious, and sellers can tell that. They can sense that desperation, I'll say, because you're trying to hold on to this. When you push them away and say, it's almost one of our first questions every time. I don't care if the person says, yeah, my house is, the roof blew off last week and there was flood damage. Man, sounds like you got a good property though. The land sounds nice. Why don't you just listen with a realtor? It's almost like one of the things we just work into every conversation. You do that because they will tell you reasons why not. They will tell you why they don't want to do that. And it's having them pull you in more. So it just helps with the sales.
That's great. And I guess then having your back pocket, you're much more prone to talk about it because if you push them that way, you're still making some money, I guess.
Confidence.
Yeah.
Gives you confidence to
that's great.
To do that and know you're not just giving the deal away. And you will give some away. Oh yeah, my best friend's a realtor. You weren't getting that deal anyway. Don't worry about it.
That's great.
You didn't lose any.
Cool. Okay, what's next, Darren?
The next was some of the successful traits of the buyers that we have. So we have a couple of buyers that have bought, over a dozen properties from us, some much more. And I'll say the number one thing with us as a wholesaler for the properties we wholesale is someone who can come in and make a fast decision and have the cash to back it up, have the capital there ready. So for me as a wholesaler, that's the buyers that I call, and honestly, they get better deals. And the reason they get them is if I have that person, I know I don't have to worry about it. If we have one of our best buyers, Ted calls me up and says, we put it out, hey, I'll take that full price offer. I'm not saying we always sell it right away because we try and see what the market does, but I'm much more inclined to do that if I have somebody who I know has that backing them up. The way you get that, I know everybody's out there, well, I don't have $300,000, just go buy a house sitting in my checking account. No, and you don't have to. A lot of times if I'm in a couple of flips going, I don't have that kind of money to sit and buy a house. I mean, so I wouldn't even be my own buyer. The way I'm able to do that though is private money, and then having that backed up with hard money lenders and things like that. So it doesn't take, if you get a couple of private lenders who, maybe, I don't know, it depends on your market. There's a lot of markets around here where there's, say, $100,000, $150,000 houses. Well, if you go to Lending Home or some of these other ones where you can get 80% loan to value, the group that I'm in, actually, we get 100% loan to value, loans on properties, but I think 90 is something they're offering to a lot of people. All you need is $15,000 plus the rehab. So if you can get a private partner, now you can go into that decision, that property, when that wholesaler puts that property out, or maybe it's on the MLS, you're making an offer. you can do it with confidence, and you're not sitting there hemming and hawing, taking extra time. So that's probably the biggest thing. The other one is they have other big networks besides their lenders of their contractors, their realtors, and if they want to get a more complicated, properly evaluated, they can get those partners in. So the fact that the people on this call are here, reach out to the other people who are on here. Maybe look at the participants. I don't know I guess you send maybe an email that they can see who's on it, and be like, hey, I'm a contractor in this area. Next time you're dealing with a flip, you can call them up, say, hey, I'm going to look at this flip. Could you come, check it out with me? We wholesaled our property in Norristown last week, and the buyer who got the deal had both those things. They had the money lined up. They knew they could do it, and they brought their contractor along. And I know you can't do it on every one, but they were able to get really accurate numbers, put together a strong offer for us, make that happen.
That's awesome. Wait, I'm going to pause you here, Darren. The next question that come through was, I think this is a good one. What did the first employee do? And an employee maybe is not even the right word. The first person you hired, what did they do in your business?
That's a really bad question to ask me, because my first people I hired was 3 in one day.
Okay.
Do not do this, by the way.
But let me ask a different way. If you were to have just hired one person, what would that person have been?
Yeah.
If you weren't going crazy and hiring 3 in one day?
Personally, my first person would be a lead manager, a lead intake and follow up and lead manager, just because, being tied to that phone and those types of more methodical process oriented things, I'm not good at, I don't enjoy. And let's be honest, getting those calls of, go to hell, stop sending me a postcard is probably not what people want to hear either. So me personally, the way I would have other people do it though is, what do you hate doing? What's the thing you like doing the least? And try and hire for that. Get yourself out of that role, and maybe you're in more roles that you shine in. The last role that a lot of people let go of is acquisitions. So the people that are going down and sitting in front of sellers, because that is such a critical role. It's so hard to fill, and it's the one that can be really costly for your company. Obviously, things go wrong. I say that, but every role is costly. If your lead intake isn't doing a good job, you're never going to get that appointment for you. If your transaction manager doesn't know how to have some sales skills and some smoothing skills, that deal's going to fall out because, they missed paperwork, or they didn't know how to talk to sellers and buyers and coordinate that stuff. So every role is important. Oh, and dispositions. I mean, we could go into all these roles, but yeah, find out what do you hate doing? What takes you the most time that you don't like to do? Hire that role.
That's great. Okay. What do you have next here for us? This is great, by the way. Is awesome.
Thanks. Yeah. Any more questions? Please, fire away, guys. Your information it's worth what you're paying for it here, but hopefully it helps somewhat. I will say one other thing, just like when you're working with sellers, try and do this with your partners as well. Is you always want to see how you can add value to them. So like lenders that we work with that lend to me, and contractors that work with me, I know this has hurt me in the past, but I will actually refer them out to other people. I've referred my private lenders to other people, and then they didn't have money on the next deal that I needed, but like they really appreciate that because it keeps things going. I have a contractor, I think he's done 5 or 6 deals just in the last 3 months that I have referred those rehab jobs to them. And now when I call him up, that guy's answering my call every single time. If I need a job, I hired him on Monday, he was on the site on Tuesday, and this week on a rehab we're doing. And you try and do that in every relationship that you have with people, your buyers. How can you add that extra personal touch? Maybe they bought a property from you, send them a handwritten card. The one guy, he's bought, 20 some properties from me. Last month, I sent him 4 Wolfstoff crystal glasses with his last, name engraved in them. This is everything you're doing. Those personal touches with sellers, with your buyers, with your lenders, with your contractors. When you do that little stuff, and it doesn't have to be that. That was really expensive, but you can do stuff for $5 that can really make you stand out.
That's great. Darren, I'm going to, next question actually is a bit going backwards, but we talked about kind of your first employee you hired. Do you use virtual assistants in your business?
We do use virtual assistants. Most of them, let's see, we have 6 virtual assistants. 5 of them are just cold callers. That's all they're doing. I say all they're doing. That's a challenge. And we treat them like employees. We have coaching calls with them, one-on-one calls. My lead manager actually manages all of our cold callers, so I don't have to do that. He has one-on-ones, and then we have a weekly training with them. I also buy commercial real estate, and so I have my own personal cold caller / assistant who I manage directly, and he does that as well. And then we have I'll call him an assistant lead intake. He does a lot of our follow-up. He sends sendoutcards.com is a website we use for personal follow-ups and cards. I can put the link in there. And so he sends those out. He calls sellers. He does cold calling. So yeah, we use 6 VAs total. And it took a long time to get the right ones. They're all from Philippines and Pakistan. And, we've had good success in both areas. I'll say the Philippines probably a little bit better. A lot of them do have a slight accent. If you get too much of an accent, I would not, go with that. But if you teach them how to just like everybody's thinking about, we talk about how can you recommend, go sell with a realtor? We have our cold callers do something similar with them. You probably weren't expecting a call from some foreign guy today. Like, call it out. Like, the elephant in the room, we're all thinking it here. Everybody hates cold caller, or hates, salespeople. Talk about it, joke about it, and get them to be personal with them. And
Yeah,
that goes a long way.
That's great. I'll just chime in on the virtual thing. We've got like 15 virtual folks. It's interesting. I kind of want to get away with the word virtual. At this point, we basically have an office in Mexico. And when I say this, it's funny when I talk to people, they're like, "Oh, you manage stuff in Mexico now?" And I'm like, "Well, not yet. Although we're so crazy, we're actually considering it in one of our last management meetings." But yeah. So and what's interesting about them, one advantage is they're in the same time zone as us. But I think the biggest advantage is we find people who have great English skills. It seems like usually they've grown up, they've spent some amount of time in America in their early childhood, and you can tell it as soon as you start talking to them. You can tell, and I do think it makes a difference if, depending on what they're trying to do, but it makes a difference, and it's super important. But I would just say also on the kind of the value there, we treat them like employees as well, but their longevity with our company is much higher than any American people we have.
That's crazy.
Which, and I don't want to prophesize why. That's probably like a half-hour dialogue of, a whole bunch of things that would be guesses, frankly, and may, everyone's going to have different opinions on that, but it's just true. I mean, and that longevity is incredibly important when you don't have to be retraining people all the time and circling through. You really appreciate that when someone kind of buys into what you're doing. So
I can tell you why you have longevity. It's probably the same reason we have longevity. It's 2 things. One, you're providing them a great job. Where these people come from, a lot of times their pay is significantly less and the work is significantly harder. But it's not all about pay. Don't just think, because they make more money with you, it's one thing. They don't make a ton. But it's, you truly, you could tell as you were talking, you care about these people. You're like, man, I love that they've been with us so long. We're building a team down there. We have they're members of us. We coach them, we guide them, and that's why they stick around so long. You're vested in these people, and they can.
Totally.
They can
I'm going to just 1 or 2 quick questions here, then I'll let you back. Any lists in particular you favor, and are you using different lists for different markets?
The only time I would, different qualification I might do for different markets is if you were looking at different price points. Other than that, the motivation and the types of people that are more or less likely to sell is going to be pretty consistent across them. When you get into lists, as with anything, the harder something is to get, often the more valuable that it is. And so you guys can, Google top lists to mail to for, postcards or cold calling or whatever. But, your standard one, your probate, your foreclosures, your code violations, your fire damage, finding out how you can get those, especially, if I was starting out. And we do this now only because I don't have to freaking do it, because this stuff is really hard, getting some of these. I'm not going to lie. It takes all your sales skills. It takes driving to courthouses. It takes, smoozing the right people sometimes. And that's the great list to get. If your county has probate lists online where everybody can just download them every month, that's great. I'm not saying don't hit them, but it's probably, you're probably not going to get as many deals because it's harder to get. If you're just saying buying lists, so there's all these really targeted, hard ones to get. The lists that we really like to do, again, it depends how big of a swath do you want to, hit. But, absentee owned is obviously the one, but we've had great success by going into these little micro neighborhoods. I'm not going to lie. Like I never would have thought that I'd be blanketing neighborhoods when I first started this, because I mean, I have thousands of hours of learning about marketing, learning lists and learning list source. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to draw a little map around these 1,000 houses and I'm going to order that list, every single one, and I'm going to mail them. And the way we target those neighborhoods, by the way, it's like, well, how do you know what neighborhood to pick? We do this by where our buyers are at. So there's some real ninja tricks on YouTube. You can find out, hey, where are buyers really buying? But we just do it based off of, man, we put a property out, we got, one or two people show up. Well, we're probably not going to that neighborhood. If we have a dozen people show up at a property we're wholesaling for a buyer show, you bet we are ordering that whole thing. We're going to be cold calling them. We're going to be mailing them, a series of postcards. And by the way, we use Lead Fusion, LEADFUZION. We buy the lists off of List Source, and then we send them a Lead Fusion, and they pull all the emails, all the phone numbers, and then we load that into Zen Call. I think it's maybe ZEN Call, or maybe it's XEN CALL. I don't remember, one of those two. And that's our calling software. The reason we use that over Mojo is it doesn't have to call your phone. If you use Mojo, it has to call an actual phone, and then that's how you do it. Whereas Zen Call, it all works through the computer. So when you have, I'm sure you could probably give a way better course on this. If it's international, it's all over the, over the internet.
Just one more question here. It came up in a meeting recently we see sometimes an agent will be really good at this, where they'll get a deal in the neighborhood and then another deal in the neighborhood, another deal. Have you found any tricks of like, it's probably less about buying data and more about like kind of hacking info, but like once you kind of penetrate a neighborhood, how do you just kind of keep working your way through it? You've already built some trust in the neighborhood, so your close rates must be higher. I don't know, just anything you've found of kind of something maybe that, I don't know, like, you get access to an HOA list or something, and now you've got everyone's phone number in the neighborhood, because you just bought their house and they don't care. So here's the list, or whatever.
That's a super ninja trick right there. No, I had not thought of that. I've tried advertising in HOA newsletters and those types of things. It was so hard to even get advertising in there, and I never really got much traction on it. So no, I wish I had some ninja tricks of how I got them. I have absolutely none. All I will say is I know that we can just be more aggressive on our marketing spend in those neighborhoods, because I know once we get under contract, we have buyers lined up. So that's all it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just one more follow-up here. Does it help your close rate to be able to use, hey, I just sold Cindy's house at 22 Main Street. You know Cindy, right? She's your neighbor. Or does that not even matter? And it's more about the sale on the back end that you feel confident on the price point.
Yeah, that's super smart. You just gave me a great marketing tip we're going to use.
Well, come on. That's not true, Darren.
I swear, I've seen realtors do that. It's like, not like I haven't got those cards in the mail.
Yeah.
I just never thought to do it for us.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's great. I can't believe you possibly got an idea out of this call. Okay. Another quick one, then we'll get back to your stuff.
No, questions from here.
Question came in is a good appointment to contract ratio.
Oh gosh. I have so many metrics that it's hard to even wrap my head around them sometimes, which we could go have a whole conversation about that. You definitely want to track some metrics, but you want to have kind of like your top 2 or 3 that really indicate where you're going at. When we were doing one of the topics I had that we never really got much into was about how COVID was impacting things. And I will say pre-COVID, we were doing a lot of probably 90% in-person appointments. And we had maybe as a total, we were probably like 4 to 1 as an appointment to contract ratio. That said, it's a deceptive number because my sales guy, Jeremy, I mean, in my opinion, no better sales guy literally in the country. He was really good at qualifying people over the phone and not over qualifying. You definitely don't want to do that because you can definitely rule some people out, but sensing that any kind of motivation on the phone. And so if it was a garbage person who just absolutely no chance of doing this, he's not going to waste his time driving there. Since COVID, we've switched to at least 90% closing over the phone and 100% first appointment on the phone. So even ones that we do in person, we're still having that phone call first. And the contract or the appointment to contract ratio now is more like 9 or 10 to 1. And I'll be honest, I haven't looked in the last month or two, but I know COVID really swung a lot. But again, it's deceptive because he's now taking way more appointments that count as appointments, but he's not actually going on them. That appointment may have taken him 10 minutes, whereas before that would have been an hour and a half to drive there, sit down, waste his time. So that's our ratios, but it's always changing, and you definitely want to track it, but you don't want to. We do a lot of cold calling, and we have people that they say, oh, we get a lead every 2 hours from our cold callers. So that means if you have a cold caller doing 40 hours a week, that's 20 leads that they're getting. And I was really like beating up our cold callers, to be honest, a little bit unfairly, because we would have 3 full-time cold callers, and if we got like 5 or 6 leads in a week, that was a good week. I'm like, I mean, that's abysmal numbers going to other people. What I found out was those people were counting like basically anybody with a pulse that answered the phone as a lead. And we're counting a lead as, no, this was a worthy appointment. Like this person actually had a home to sell and, wasn't like a complete crazy. So when you get into those appointment ratios, you got to be careful who you're listening to and how they count appointments.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. I guess ultimately going from cold calling to closed deals, right, is a great metric, right? Because like if you said anyone has an appointment, but then you have a low close rate on the appointments, right, then
Exactly.
that ultimately plays all the way through.
Exactly.
Cool. Do you have an ISA? I don't know what that means. Internal sales agent, maybe? Do you have an ISA, or are your acquisition guys handling all calls?
Yeah, and
Before you answer, can we just break down the question a little bit? Because if it confused me, it must confuse other people too. And when I say confused, I think Chris is probably just a couple steps further down the rabbit hole of knowing all the different terms for these people. So I guess like an ISA is probably maybe someone more virtual or someone who's just on the phone, whereas your acquisition guy is probably someone who's actually taking in-person appointments. Is that the difference between the two?
Yeah, and I could have this wrong as well. We don't have an ISA. I know other people that do have those, and my understanding of it is someone who they're the ones kind of finding, the property gets under, like a deal comes in, they find out the best way to distribute it. So like, are we going to flip it? Are we going to rent it? Are we going to wholesale it? Like, so it's like internal sales, like maximizing every deal. But if I have that wrong, please, jump in, Chris, and let me know. I would say I really, I'm almost overly protective of my acquisition manager's time because it is, it's critical. So anything I find that he's doing that he doesn't have to be doing, I'm like, why are you doing that, Jeremy? Like, come on, like, how do we get Jim, our VA, doing that? How do we automate this?
Right. And is that because, just to dig a little deeper, I think you kind of said up front, right? The last job you oftentimes take off is the person who's going on the appointments. It's the hardest to replace. I have to assume it's also the most expensive person on the team. And so you're trying to push those tasks onto someone else who is frankly easier to find and or less expensive. Is that a fair?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. When he's doing something, if he's working, he's making the company a lot of money, and I want to make sure that that the things that he's doing are those high value. Just like your Chad. You're not going to be sitting there doing cold calling probably all day. You got somebody you're hiring to do that same thing. So just with him, if I can automate something, I'm going to do it. So to answer the question about what calls is he taking or not taking, our lead intake handles as much as possible, and they do qualifying on appointments. And so if a call is going to Jeremy, it's because there's at least some level of motivation that's been detected, and that's happening. And also, he's not doing a lot of the follow-up. If it's a hot lead, he's following up on it. But anytime it's like, hey, they didn't answer the phone, or they're probably more retail, boom, kicks it right back to our lead manager, minimizing the time that he's involved in doing that.
Cool. Last question here, and we'll get to whatever your next point is, and we'll probably wrap this up in 10 minutes or so. Sure. This has been great. Question comes in here: what percentage of deals are you assigning versus closing on? And I think just to add some more color to this, that the question is kind of getting at that, sometimes sellers might not be comfortable with additional investors coming through, or knowing you're going to ultimately profit on it before it closes. Uh, Obviously, if you close and then resell it, you're paying, it depends on the area, but additional costs. Just kind of talk through I guess, your thinking on that question overall.
Yeah, great question. We did in 2019, I just looked up the numbers a little bit ago because I just had my mastermind. We did 54 closed deals. We did 3 flips and I think 3 or 4 rentals that we held. So that's our ratio. So it's very, very heavily weighted to the wholesaling. I would say when you're talking about seller's perception of wholesaling and all that, 90, there may have been two deals the entire year where the seller even knew what a wholesaler was, what that how that was structured, and what that even means. It is, we are partnering with people. We have people that we partner with, people that approve the deals through us. We have contractors that we bring through the property, and so anytime that a buyer, we are coaching them on their interaction with the seller if they're coming in through that house. So we don't even get into the question of, hey, are you assigning this or whatever? Even if they have to ask that, hey, do you just wholesale this thing? Hey, we have partners we work with. We do buy properties. We do buy properties ourselves and flip them. We also partner with people, in some cases. And so the name that we'll be taking the property under could be different than this right here. And that's it. If you're getting into, again, it gets people, they're really smart about what they do and all the little ins and outs of it. If you start trying to explain that to these sellers, you're going down a bad path. You need to go back to asking questions about it. Like, hey, what do you do with my house anyway when you buy this thing? Well, you want to say, oh, well, we flip it and we make it really nice, or oh, we fix it up and we rent it. No, don't answer that question. Ask them. I'll be honest, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we do a lot of things with these, houses, try and make them nicer. What were you hoping that we did with this house? Find out what they want you to do with it. So deflect, I would say it's not always about deflecting, but it is a little bit deflecting. Acknowledge their question, say it's a great question, and then try and ask something back that gets them back on track.
That's great. And I guess just one more point there. Do you ever, I guess you probably don't ever lose a deal. You're at the closing table. They then see your wholesale fee, but it's pretty darn hard for them to walk away at that point, I would imagine, right? So
two things. Our sellers, and granted, I am new to Pennsylvania, so I will say that we're still learning the ins and outs here of how that works. But in Colorado, we have a separate settlement statement for the buyer and the seller. Our sellers never see our assignment fee. That's not even part of it. In Pennsylvania, the way that we're closing these is we do, and I've learned this from
Becca,
a great mentor for me in Pennsylvania, learning the ins and outs. She's been fantastic to work with, and she taught us about the termination and novation. So when we go to the closing, we're canceling our sales agreement with the seller. We do a termination, and then an identical sales agreement between the seller and then the person we're assigning it to, the new buyer, is signed right there at the closing table. Before that happens, the buyer, the end buyer, has already brought in our assignment fee. That's a separate check that goes to us. The seller has no knowledge of that, and they don't need to have any knowledge of that. That's just given the title company given to us. So we don't run into situations ever where our seller, knows that we're just not purchasing it. If we've run into it, I can't say ever. We've run into a deal or two where I remember a seller did find out about some extra, the money we were making. I think we were using a lending home or something, and it was on that documentation. We said, hey, look, when we purchase these properties, we rehab them and fix them up, and we put a lot of money into them. So we write the purchase price for more because when we borrow money, we need to include that in there. And so we just told them it was part of the rehab, which honestly it is. It's part of the investment that is going into the property to make it better. So that's how we answer that.
Just a couple more questions have come in. This has been good. There's no reason not to answer them. And I'm learning stuff too, so that's great. Brand new wholesaler, would you recommend, if you had to pick one, bandit signs or buying a list? What would you do first?
It all comes down to that ratio of time versus money. So, if you're saying, hey, I got some money to spend, whatever it is, I'd say I'd make sure that you have a couple months of budget for whatever it is you're going to be diving into. You know, paid leads are obviously the faster if you want to get your phone ringing right away. But if your budget is a concern, then yeah, bandit signs are great. I mean, you hitting the phones yourself. I that, you know, I'm going to go on a limb and say cold calling is the thing that I would do. And the reason I would say that cold calling should be your first thing you're trying is twofold. One, it's hard. So it's going to prove to yourself, man, do I have what it takes? Do I have, you know, to stick with this and actually put in, you know, an hour every single day of getting on that phone and getting people being mad at me. So it's a little bit of a character test, to be honest. But two, it's going to help you with those sales conversations. How many people are you able to keep on the phone? You know, study your John Martinez or whatever sales training. There's Never Split the Difference. There's, oh, great book. You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. That's the Sandler training method. Phenomenal book. It's right in line with John Martinez. I mean, honestly, I think John stole his material and just made it real estate. I'm joking, but I'm not. So that's going to teach you those sales skills so that when you do have a good seller, when you do got a lead in front of you where, man, this person could use your help, are you skilled enough at listening, at talking to that person that you can help them get to a better place? Because if you walk out of a house and you know that person was hurting and you didn't buy their house, you failed that person. You did not help them get to a better place. You know, it's not like, oh, you didn't fail because you didn't make money. You didn't fail because you didn't help. And that's
Yeah.
the mentality you got to go in. You know, how can I help this person get them there? And it's going to help me as well as a secondary factor.
That's awesome. People looking for your contact info, maybe you just throw it into this Zoom webinar chat, and we'll get to more about you, but also if you happen to be an investor, Darren does obviously work with investors as wholesalers. And I'm sure if they email you, you can get them on your buyers list, or if they have more questions about how to be an amazing wholesaler, you'd probably help them. So that's good. I see he just if you look at the Zoom webinar chat, Darren put his email and also the URL, which is great. So here's just one question. Do you aim for an average wholesale fee, or how do you kind of, how does someone think about that? Yeah, I'll let you kind of just, I'm sure it's something you've thought about. So
Great question. And we do shoot for an average wholesale fee that we're trying to hit, a minimum wholesale fee. Don't go into the house. I want to go back to the sales training. Don't go in saying, oh, I need to buy it for 150 and then just start talking about 150. But the way we do those numbers real quick are, everybody's probably heard of the 70% method. So you take the ARV, the after repair value, let's say it's 200,000, 70% would be 140,000, 30% off of 200. And then let's say repairs are 20. So now we're at 120,000. And if I want to wholesale this thing, maybe take off another 10,000. So now I'm down to 110. So that's my target that I want to get the property at. The average we actually are shooting for is 15,000. So we're higher than 10. It used to be 10. We want to go for 15. We've averaged last 6 months of 2019, we were actually over 20,000. It's come down this year with COVID and buying over the phone, but we've made steps to fix that, actually, you know, doing renegotiations and things like that. So we're getting it back up. That said, we don't always use the 70% method. So that's kind of the baseline. I only use that because it's what people know. We just take that percentage and we modify that greatly depending on where we're buying. And so we have hot neighborhoods, and I mean hot ones, where we go up to 85%, maybe even above. So that same $200,000 house, if we use the 85% rule, now we're at 170,000, 20,000 off of rehab, we're at 150, 10,000 off for wholesale. Now we're at 140. So we'll put that property in contract at 140,000 versus 110 in a mediocre neighborhood. And then conversely, we have properties, we have areas where it's much worse. We're probably, you know, in the 60% rule. And we have areas we just won't buy at all, like unless they're just, hey, take my house. And even then it's got to be in good shape. So it varies quite a bit, but that's a real quick and dirty, but it takes knowing your neighborhoods and knowing what people are buying for. So one of the things you can do is if a wholesaler, get on every wholesaler's list, by the way. So get on them all. If you haven't, if you're trying to analyze properties, analyze every single one. Attend the showing if you can. talk to other investors. That's going to build your networking out. You're going to meet contractors there. Hey man, gosh, how are you getting funding for this? Just talk to people. I can't stress that enough. But that's going to help you in analyzing deals. But analyze all those at home too. So that wholesaler sends that property out. Hey, what would I buy that for based on the information in that email? Start looking around on Zillow, or if you have MLS access, MLS. Who are the cash buyers in that area? There's tricks on ListSource for pulling that as well. And, reach out to them, send them a letter, give them, skip tracing, give them a call. Who are the lenders in that area? Hey, were you flipping this thing? Did you lend on this thing? I mean, you can get the buyers, you can get the lenders. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. But man, I funded a flip I'm doing this week. I funded the deal because my new guy, Mario, who's doing phenomenal work, he reached out to one of our buyers, just asked how we could help. The guy talked about lending and said, yeah, I want to lend on property. He had me call him. I said, well, I got a deal today if you want before I call anybody else. And we got it done. So just talking with as many people as you can. I honestly forget what the original question was about how you figure out how you price properties, but
yeah, no, it's great.
That's going to help.
That's great. Cool. I mean, we've covered a ton of stuff here. I'm through with my hot topics. I did want to say something to everyone, which is, I had a few people ask, like, do we do like rebroadcast of these things? We do have a YouTube channel. If you go into YouTube and hit Real Estate Hackers, you should be able to find it. I will send out a link to everyone after this show. And we're going to get a more regular of kind of putting all of our videos in that channel, obviously this one included, because we find sometimes people enjoy kind of rewatching certain pieces, or if maybe they missed the second half of it. Darren, anything we missed that you really wanted to cover today?
Oh gosh, I don't know. There's, like, as I said when I started, it's hard. Like, what am I going to talk about? But no, we've dove into a lot of topics. I did just put the link in there to that send out cards that I use. And so that's a great way of reaching out. It's a more targeted. You got to go in and customize each card to make it a little bit different. But if you're trying to get that personal touch, we also send brownies through that system as well. They have a bunch of different gifts, but we use the brownies. It's just a way to get people's attention and get them to call you back in a lot of times that you couldn't. So we've done deals because of that right there.
That's awesome. You actually sent just to the panelists. I sent to everybody. So it's okay. It's a little Zoom trick here I've learned after screwing it up myself a bunch of times. Kenneth wants to know link for the mug. So Real Estate Hackers mugs. I will. That's my homework for this session. If you didn't see it on Facebook, one of our employees for my birthday got me a really classy, awesome looking Real Estate Hackers mug. We will get that in a form that either we'll do some giveaways or people can actually order, because it's super cool. We're not there yet, so but it's coming. That's awesome, Darren. Thank you so much for joining. I definitely want to have you on again. Folks who joined through this, if you missed some of it, we will send out a YouTube link. We'll also probably put it into the Real Estate Hackers podcast if you're more of a podcast person. If you haven't listened to that before, Real Estate Hackers is how you find that in all your podcasting spots. Darren, you're a stud. Thanks for joining us from your awesome looking house. Doing your thing. If you're looking to buy investment properties, we put Darren's info in here. Darren at sellmyhousefastpa.com is his email. He's an awesome dude, and this is great, man. Thanks so much for coming here.
Really appreciate you having me on, Chad. It was an honor. Thanks.
Cool. We'll be back again soon for more virtual meetups until we can meet again in person. I like meeting in person better, but these are good too. People can come from all over the world. So be on the lookout. We'll get these things out. And then if you didn't yet, mark your calendars. April 20th and 21st, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 700 investors. It's going to be amazing. Darren, I'm going to put you in the spot here, but you're going to be there, right, buddy?
100% guaranteed.
All right, there we go. By then, we won't even know what COVID is. So cool. Thanks for joining, man. It was a blast, and I hope you guys got a lot out of this, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Bye.